What up, though? Welcome to Gangsta's Paradise Podcast. This is where I kick cautionary street tales. I'm not here to encourage folks to join gangs, cliques, mobs, or crews, but this is a fair warning if you choose to cross that line. Welcome to Gangsta's Paradise Podcast. I got a salute to the real fans of the podcast. Mad salute to Columbus, Ohio. I did a docudrama about the Short North Posse, and that story just keep going on and on and on. People still checking that story out right now. They're making a lot of comments, a lot of people representing their hoods and things like that. So you all can go over there to Gangsta's Paradise TV1 and check out that story. You can leave a comment. You from Columbus, Ohio, represent your hood over there. And make sure y'all subscribe to the channel over there and share that episode. Click that notification bell. That way you can get notifications whenever I do a docudrama. And make sure y'all subscribe to this channel. If you're new listeners to the Gangsta's Paradise Podcast, come on, join the nation. Subscribe to the channel. Share this episode with your audience. Gangsta's Paradise merch coming soon. It's coming soon. And plus, I will be accepting donations to this channel. I really want to spread this brand, so your support will help that out. This is Gangsta's Paradise Podcast. This is where I tell cautionary street tales. This is a fair warning if you choose to cross that line. This episode, I want to go back down to the A, hot Atlanta, and the Miami boys when they came invading town. I just recently took a trip down to the A, had a blast down there. And if you follow my YouTube channel that you see, I travel around in different cities and, I get footage for the docudramas. So I just recently got back down from down there. The traffic is really hectic down there, particularly in the downtown area. It's real cluttered up with traffic. Atlanta is like a melting pot, so it's many different type of people down there. People went down there congregating for various reasons. When people move from their respective cities, a lot of people went to Atlanta. Hurricane Katrina forced people to Atlanta. A lot of people went there from New Orleans. So it's a melting pot of different people. Basically, you name the city somebody from, you can find it in Atlanta. And I guess with the traffic, people brought all their little different driving styles down to Atlanta. Even the time I was down there, I saw three accidents, and I was like, man, so you're gonna run into a lot of accidents down there. But I just had a ball. I had a chance to go to the Braves game, even though it was rained out. Many people I grew up with, people I went to school with, and moved to Atlanta. They lived down there and been living down there for years, at least 20 years. I got a lot of people I did a lot of business with down there in Atlanta. I know a lot of business people out there, got some great things going on. Even when I was doing radio or internet radio and I was playing a lot of music, it was coming from out of Atlanta. Matter of fact, shouts out to my guy down there who used to send me a lot of that music from down there. So I used to play a lot of their music on my shows. So, and even back in the days, way back in the days in the 90s when the Freaknik was popping down there, back then when I was living in Detroit, just like everybody else, they'd jump on that road and head to the Freaknik. And this is the interesting thing about that. Leaving Michigan and heading south, once you get into like Ohio, you just run into this stream of people and they all mobbing down there to the Freaknik. So the Atlanta used to be overrun by people down there at the Freaknik. I've been down there quite a few times. It's a few major drug dealers from back in the days that got assassinated down in Atlanta that were from Detroit. Bruiser got assassinated down there. And then the leader of the Best Friends gang, Boogaloo, he actually got assassinated down there. So, and then another thing that was popping down there is the BMF. BMF had it going on down there. Some guys, Big Meats, all of them from Southwest Detroit. So They came up down there and really turned the town upside down. You couldn't go through the A without recognizing BMF. But then there's a lot of other players that was down there, like the Miami boys. And it's also a melting pot of gangs down there. There's so many gangs and many people, many natives or grassroots Atlanta people felt like the influxion of different people come from different places. It made the crime rate go up down there. It definitely made the gangs just sprout out everywhere down there. So it's all over Atlanta. And that's why I say about these southern cities, because in general, people will look at southern cities like they slow until you actually go down into those cities and you'll see some people are not slow. You can't go there popping game. They got game too. But it's a melting pot of gangs down there. And, the natives and the grassroots people, and even the people that been there for a mighty long time, they are like these rival people that come to Atlanta. It's much like how we got Michigan and Ohio. It's like a little slight rivalry. So Atlanta got people from New York or people like New Orleans or Miami or something like that. They figure those people from those places are competitors. So even when I talk to my people down in Atlanta, they always mentioning something about people from New Orleans or New York or Miami or something, because they feel like Atlanta is the spot now. And then, you got a lot of people down in Atlanta that's from New York. I even got people down there from New York down in Atlanta. So, like I said, it's a melting pot, but those are the people they felt like try to shift stuff in Atlanta when you got your grassroots Atlanta people there. A lot of rappers, a lot of entertainment is down there. Tyler Perry has a movie studio down there. So there's a lot of TV series or cable series that's being filmed in Atlanta. Then, you had your artists and rappers. They got multitudes of artists that went gold and platinum, just a whole fluctuation of artists that have sold a lot of records, historical people that come from there, grassroots people. And then you got people that they be from somewhere else, they stars, but they actually move to Atlanta and stay in the Atlanta area. Some people feel like they actually celebrities when they actually in Atlanta versus being in their hometown where it may be a lot of drama and a lot of haters, because they say when you become a star, the most hate you get, it come from your home place. And even when you look at the real grassroots OGs from Atlanta, it's not really like a lot of press on them, but you have to be from there to be familiar with some of these guys, and people around the area may be familiar with some of these guys. Another guy that was very notable was Shawty Low. They say Shawty Low was a big dope boy down there in Atlanta. And I'm not here to promote these things. I'm not. This is a fair warning. This is cautionary street tales. It's intervention. But Shawty Low was known to be a former drug dealer. He turned to rap music to get out of the game. But you got people like Charles Black, Fat Steve, and others. Like I said, you have to be a real AT alien to know these guys. But again, you got crews like the Miami boys who came down there in the 80s and really turned the game upside down. They were known to be a group that had changed the dope game down there. And it was basically a loosely, motley type of crew that all came from the Miami area, basically from Miami. And I really don't want to go into all where they really started at, how they got started, because this group right here has spread it out in different cities and different areas like Jacksonville. They really spread out. This is a big crew right here. And all the areas they went through, they set up shop and they started balling. This is Gangsta's Paradise Podcast. Make sure y'all subscribe to this channel. Do me a favor, family. Give me a shout out to the nation. I want y'all to share this episode with your audience. It really helps the show out if you share this episode. I appreciate that. Then we look at the 80s. It was just popping when it comes to cocaine, and Miami was the hotbed for actually cocaine. So it was a big fluctuation of cocaine floating through Miami during the 80s. And they was getting it real cheap. So when they go to places like Atlanta, they can double up. That was back in the days when people used to go out of town and double up. It was very cheap. It was more expensive in the A, so they went down there and set up shop. And they marked their flag like they would outline the word Miami in gold teeth and diamonds in their mouth. They wore Miami t-shirts and jackets and hats and flaunted their status as the Miami Boys. With the Miami Boys in towns, the DEA considered Georgia to be sitting on top of a volcano. And Miami just became a drug war down there. So you got to spread your wings and move to other areas. As I rode around Bankhead and rode around the A, I had a chance to get over there to the Trap Music Museum. It's an interesting place. I like the idea of the place. I went in there and checked it out. It was pretty cool. So I had a blast over there. It's very interesting. They got some things in there that look like a showing up trap in there. But like I said, it's a great idea. They were known to move with force and intimidated people. But that comes along with the game, especially when you got a strong movement going on. You try to implement fear in your movement so people won't test you. It just goes along with the game. And another thing you have to look at, when you got different cities, people pretty much know that drugs come in on the coastal areas or whatever routes they use to smuggle it into the country. And when you make it to all these different destinations, sometimes they stop and cut the drug up and stretch it out. Whereas these guys coming from Miami, they bringing a real potent brand of cocaine to Atlanta. It's a difference. It's a big difference between rock cocaine and crack cocaine. Crack cocaine is pretty much the cut up. They putting all these different type of elements in there to stretch it out, whereas rock cocaine is more of in a pure form. It's more potent. So the Miami Boys was known to have the best dope around, and they had the best prices. They were down there killing it. And they flaunt their riches. They were known to be one of the most ruthless gangs that ever hit Atlanta. And some ruthless people I know for sure was down there posted in Atlanta besides these guys. But these guys had the most notoriety. They were more notable. They stood out, particularly by their clothing, you can tell. Most of their clothing were based around Miami. They went down there and invaded some of the public housing projects. Before they arrived, most dealers were smaller and independent. So they paid $500 for an ounce of cocaine in Miami. That ounce can go for $1,500 in Atlanta. And part of the reason why they, like I said earlier in the podcast, partly the reason because you got this drug war going on down in Atlanta. Not just by people just running around the streets. You got them cartel bosses and things like that were posted down in Miami. And there were a lot of them were at war down there. Roseldo, the Black Widow, she was posted down in Miami at a time. They say she killed so many people down there. They say she killed at least 200 people down in Miami by her crew. So these guys had to spread to places like Atlanta. Sometimes you can be at home and the market get really saturated and you have to go out of town. This is Gangsta's Paradise Podcast. This is a fair warning if you choose to cross that line. I want to give you a chance to jump in on the market by signing up to Weevil. Deposit any amount of money and earn up to 10 free stocks. I'm into long-term investments, and with this bearish market, it could be a good time to invest. Use the link in the description, deposit $1, and you can earn up to 10 free stocks. You sign a contract with the streets. A contract that can never be fulfilled. The streets keep moving with you or without you. This crew moved with force. They had the money and the power and they let it be known. It wasn't no secret, at least to the streets. A lot of homicides were tied to the Miami Boys. And their primary bases were housing projects. They would go squat in empty apartments, post up, set up shop. They brought a lot of workers from down there in Miami to come be soldiers on the streets, pedal on the streets. Mostly sent up there by the kingpins back there in Miami. And it just sets up a ripple effect. It take people to kick the door wide open. And once the door get wide open, the price come down. So you can't go to Atlanta nowadays and try to double up. You really can't go nowhere somewhere and try to double up. You can go in some dry areas and maybe supply the actual area. But to go somewhere and just double up, I don't know. Maybe if you're coming from the West Coast or one of these coastal areas and you come inland, maybe you can double up then. But that's not really a big trait people do nowadays like it was back in the 80s. In the 80s, it's a real popular area when it comes to actual crack cocaine. It really took a lot of media attention, got a lot of media attention, and a lot of media was on a lot of these crews and cliques all over the nation, even around the world, Well, I'm not going to say around the world because every part of the world wasn't caught up in the crack epidemic. So there was a lot of street wars going on in Atlanta back in those days. And the Miami boys was on top of that list, creating those street wars, or at least into those street wars. These guys were brazen. They walked around in the open with walkie-talkies through the projects. It wasn't no secret what they were doing. The Herndon Holmes boys were one of their main rivals. So they had a lot of rivals, they had a lot of beef, but they kept moving and making that money. And they really had a long run. They lasted up into the 90s when the Summer Olympics was about to come through town. They felt like they got to get these guys off the streets. They got to move this particular gang out of the way. So they came and swept up these guys. A lot of these guys got long prison sentences. And, the Miami boys came to an end down in Atlanta. This is a high risk, high reward business. The bigger the risk, the bigger the rewards. This is a fair warning. This is intervention. If you choose to cross that line, it's the price to pay. They shut down the Freaknik a long time ago. At least the real Freaknik. I believe they tried to bring it back over time, but it didn't have the electricity that it used to have back during the 90s. And one of the reasons why they had to stop the Freaknik because of Bruiser getting killed down there. He was a major drug dealer out of Detroit. I actually did a docudrama on Bruiser. You can go back and check that out on my YouTube channel. But we were down in Atlanta, and then I had drove over to Mississippi, and that's how I found out that this guy was assassinated in Atlanta. So you had people that had dramas from other cities. They would come down to Atlanta, and act on their drama. So when that happened, they stopped the Freaknik. So it altered the history of the Freaknik. But we used to have fun. We used to go down there. There's a bunch of different stuff going on down there. So you really don't actually need the Freaknik because everybody already down there. Be looking for my next podcast. I got something real special coming up soon. I want to thank you, Nation, the Gangsters Paradise Nation. Checking out the Gangsters Paradise podcast. Like I said, subscribe to this channel. Share this episode. I appreciate it. You know what I always say. Keep your head up and stay positive.